Hello guys, it's Webby and welcome back to another video. Welcome to a beautiful day here in Melbourne, Australia, and welcome to the Hyundai Kona N. Now last year I was very fortunate to drive both the manual and the DCT versions of the i30N, and it was an absolutely fantastic car. I absolutely love them. And then Hyundai said to me, why don't you try the Kona N to see how it compares. It shares a lot of features with the i30, the engine, the gearbox, a lot of interior features. But then it's a little bit different because obviously it sits a bit higher. It's got actually some more creature comforts inside the car. So yeah, I said, why not? Let's give it a go. Because I love hot hatches. I'm a petrol head, probably like you are too. So I was really keen to see how this car compares to the i30. This only comes with the 8-speed DCT, as you probably know. There's no manual gearbox option, which I find perfectly fine. So I'm really keen to see how this compares to the i30. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll have a look around the outside, the inside obviously as well. Then we'll get it out on the road, because obviously that's the important bit about this car. How does it drive? How does it compare to its sister car, the i30? It's got a lot to live up to, because the i30 is an absolutely cracker of a hot hatch. So yeah, let's get stuck in and see what this Kona N is all about. So if we talk about the styling just to start off with, because obviously that's the obvious differences on the outside of the car, you can immediately tell that this is no ordinary Kona. Your standard model Konas are very sort of subdued compared to this one. They start off with things like sort of black plastic wheel arches, quite small alloy wheels, and fairly sort of indiscreet styling at the front of the car. This one obviously stands out being in the performance blue hero colour, because that colour is only available on the N models. You've then got things like the little red stripe which goes down the lower section of the front bumper, and that also runs down the side of the car and then follows around to the rear bumper as well. We've then got things like these 19-inch alloy wheels which are wrapped in pearly P0 rubber, and then you've got the black tail grille at the front of the car, which all this sort of aggressive styling marks it out as being the N model. So it's very recognisable on the road that this isn't any ordinary Kona. Obviously under the bonnet we've got the 2-litre turbocharged petrol engine which comes out of the i30N. It's good for 206 kilowatt and 392 newton meters of torque, and like the i30 it is only front wheel drive. It comes with the 8-speed dual clutch gearbox as its only option, which as I said earlier is no bad thing, because that thing is an absolutely awesome gearbox. So from the side, the car actually sits a little bit lower than a standard Kona, as you'd expect. It's got obviously stiff and sport suspension which is adjustable with the different drive modes, which is something we'll have a look at as we're driving the car. We've also got things like the black gloss door mirrors. This is the Kona N Premium, so you can have the option of obviously the sunroof or the black roof. I prefer the actual sunroof myself. I don't mind the black roof option, but I do like having a sunroof in a car. As we come along to the side of the car, we've then got the huge rear spoiler, and obviously the body kit that goes along all the way from the front around the side to the back of the car. And then little things like the N logo just stamped in the bottom of the sort of side skirt there. So it is very recognisable, as I said, particularly in this performance blue hero colour. Around the back of the car, and again it mimics the i30 a little bit, it's got this massive sort of like fake diffuse at the bottom, again with a little red stripe. Massive great exhaust, one either side, which do make a great sound by the way. Although I'm not sure if it sounds as good as the i30. The i30 seems to pop and crackle a little bit more, but this feels slightly more grown up. Maybe that was deliberate by Hyundai, I don't know. But it does feel, like I say, a little bit more subdued. Not that it's quiet by any stretch of the imagination. As I said a minute ago, you've got the rear spoiler on the top of the tailgate, and I do love this triangular brake light at the top. It's very reminiscent of what you see on the rear of Formula 1 cars. And I think it's just a nice little touch. It's just like, it just sounds, I'm sporty, I'm aggressive. Yeah, I just love that little triangular tail light. Rather disappointingly, the boot in the Kona N is actually smaller than the i30N. The i30 is 381 litres, the Kona is 20 less at 361, which I find a little bit odd because normally the SUV is bigger. Not quite sure how they work that out, but 20 litres probably isn't going to be a massive deal for you. It's good to see under the boot floor we've got a little bit of storage, but then we've also got a temporary space saver spare wheel as well, rather than one of these sort of like inflation kits. So on a car like this, if you get a puncture in a tyre, an inflation kit's probably not really the ideal way to go. A lot of cars tend to look a bit ugly from the back, but I actually think the Kona's quite a good looking car. Some people don't necessarily like sort of the split level tail lights, but I actually think it gives it a bit of identity, and sometimes they can be sort of too tall as well, especially when you've got that big diffuser at the bottom. If you had just lights here, you'd get a massive sort of blue paint. So it does actually break up the paintwork a little bit, which is actually quite nice. But yeah, I like this sort of rear three-quarter view of the car. I think it's quite a sexy looking mini SUV. I know that's not normally what you think of SUVs, but with all the sort of aggressive body kit and the wheels and the spoiler and everything, I think it actually suits this car really, really well. So next we're going to have a look inside the Kona N. As I said, this is the premium version, so I'll point out some of the bits and pieces that you get on this model. So I'm going to grab the camera off of the tripod and give you a little bit of a tour of the inside of the car. Alright, so let's head inside, shall we? Put the camera on wide angle so we can get a proper look. Things that you sort of notice when you first get inside is how nice these seats are. A bit like the i30, they're a mixture of suede and leather, so suede on the sort of middle section, leather on the outside. You've got the N logo there in the middle. They're not the same seats as you get in the i30 because they are a bit more sporty, and the N logo on the i30 is actually got a light behind it, so it sort of lights up at night time, which is quite cool. But I do like things like the sort of the blue stitching around there, all down the sides of the seats, and obviously that can go to the steering wheel and then the buttons on the steering wheel as well. I do like the Harman Kardon sound system that's standard on this car, and it's absolutely cracker of a sound system as well. It's got some really good bass. I'm really impressed with that. Driver's seat on this premium model is fully electric, so you've got the up and down, backwards and forwards, you've got your backrest, and you've also got electric lumbar support as well. So if you do suffer from a bad back, it's great to have electric lumbar support, which is really handy. So other things we've got as well, we've got the full digital instrument cluster, which is nice to see. The steering wheel is absolutely fantastic. It's really sort of nice to hold in the hand. It's perforated on the sides where you're actually going to sort of get plenty of grip from. And as I said, you've got the two blue buttons there, and you've got the N-Grin shift, something we'll talk about a little bit more when we're driving the car. So let's start the engine up and I can show you some of the features. So there's the fully digital dash there, just in front of the driver. And then we've also got, you can just about see the head-up display, which is part of the premium pack, which is really, really nice. We've then also got the 10.25 inch navigation display there. So that's obviously in navigation. You've got Apple CarPlay, you've got Android Auto, both of which are wired. They're not the wireless version, but that's fine. I don't have a problem with that personally. Just down below that, we've then got the climate control, and that's pretty sort of self-explanatory. And then if we look around here, we've got a 12-volt power socket, USB, and also wireless charging mat as well. Coming to the center console, pretty standard stuff, so traction control. That's the button that adjusts your drive modes. We'll have a look at that again when we're driving. So that gives you things like economy, sport, comfort, that type of thing, which just exhaust sound and that is sort of bits and pieces. Heated and air conditioned front seats, great for days like today when it's a little bit warm here. Heated steering wheel, can't ever see myself using that if I'm honest. Bit of a gimmick here in Australia, I think. Parking sensors, and then your camera buttons there as well. So it's all pretty self-explanatory stuff. There's a little splash of blue here on the gear stick, and also then on the handbrake as well. The only disappointing thing for me on the whole interior of this car is if you have a look around, it's just very sort of grey, plasticky. There's no real colour until you get to the buttons on the steering wheel, which I personally find a little bit sort of disappointing. I would like to see a bit more colour in here, because yeah, it just feels like any other Kona apart from that. Yeah, it would just be nice to see a bit of colour. If they put something, so if they copied this blue and put it round sort of the air vents here, and maybe over the air vents there in the corner, I think that would actually lift the cabin a little bit. Wouldn't cost a lot of money, I don't think, and I actually think it would make a big difference. Another feature we've also got, being this is a premium model, as I mentioned earlier, is the electric sunroof, which would be definitely my choice. I wouldn't be having the black roof on the car, I don't think. I'd definitely want the sunroof, so that's nice to see. It's a shame it's not a full-length panoramic sunroof like you get in the i30, but then I guess that's because of the shape of the roof. It curves too much to actually be able to put that larger panel of glass in. But either way, sunroof is there, which is absolutely fantastic. Now this is the main menu for the entertainment system, and the one we're really interested in is N mode. So if we go into there, it gives you all sorts of different readings: engine oil temperature, throttle input, rev counter tells you what gears you're in. You can do a lap timer if you're doing some sort of circuit work. If you slide across, this is where we can then go into adjust the custom settings for the drive modes. So it allows you to adjust each setting individually, so you can tailor the car to exactly how you want it to be. If you want a softer suspension setup, and then maybe put the gearbox into sport, the engine into sport, the exhaust obviously into sport, because clearly that's the only option. But then you can also adjust the head-up display as well. So you can actually tailor the car to exactly what you want it to be. So if you live in sort of a road where there's lots of bumpy roads, you can put the softer suspension on. But as I said, you can have the exhaust on the loud mode, so it sounds bloody awesome basically. And yeah, so rather than having sort of the preset modes, you can tailor something to your preference. First impressions, it's a really nice seating position. The seats are super comfortable, got plenty of adjustment from those electric buttons on the side of the seat. So with the steering wheel, it's a lovely size and shape. It's not flat bottomed like is fashionable to do these days. You've got a nice perforated section around the sides, so where you actually sort of grip the steering wheel. And the thing I do like is this section here isn't too thick. Sometimes you find on some cars this section here is like really thick and you can't sort of grab a hold of the wheel properly, which sort of then ruins the experience a little bit. But this is really nice. Kind of your hand just sits there nicely. It's very sort of natural. It's nice and easy to get to the paddles as well, because you would want to be using them if you're going for a bit of a spirited drive. We've then got buttons for your volume. You've got your adaptive cruise control on the right hand side. Your two N buttons. The left hand one will put you into your custom mode, which is what we were looking at a minute ago, where you can tailor the settings for the car to suit your needs. And then the one on the right hand side puts you into N mode, which is obviously full out attack, go and have some fun on a track mode. We've then got the little red button, the NGS, that's N grin shift. So it gives you 20 seconds of extra power. So if you're wanting to overtake, go up a hill, whatever, you get a bit more power for 20 seconds. The seating position is really good. As I said, the seats are super comfortable. The view ahead is superb. I did think when I first got in the car that the seats sat a little bit too high for me. But driving it for a couple of days, I've actually got used to it. So yeah, I actually think the driving position is really nice. Visibility out the front is really good. The side windows are a decent size too. The sunroof lets in a fair bit of light, which is quite nice, because otherwise the cabin would be a little bit sort of dark and gloomy. But overall, a really nice place to be. Let's have a jump in the back now and see how much space we've got from where my seating position is at the minute. Because one of the criticisms on smaller SUVs these days is they're not really designed for people sitting in the back because it's such a small car. So I'll be interested to see how much space we've got in this Kona N for rear passengers. So hopping in the back then, it's actually not too bad back here. I have got a fairly decent amount of leg space, and I do like the fact that you can fit your feet underneath the driver's seat. I've sat in so many cars recently, we can't really stretch your legs out properly because your feet are restricted to just the floor area beneath you, rather than being able to get under the driver's seat, which I suppose is a bit of a benefit of being in an SUV as opposed to a hatchback. Headroom isn't too bad, but then again, I'm not particularly tall. If you were sat in the back and you were 6 foot plus, you'd probably struggle a bit back here. Not necessarily for legroom, but definitely for headroom. You still get a decent amount of light coming in through the rear side windows, and the sunroof does let a little bit of light into the back of the car as well, which is nice to see. Because this car's got a manual handbrake, unfortunately we don't get rear air vents for the passengers in the back, which is a bit of a shame, because it would have been nice just to get a bit of the air conditions flowing back here. We've got one USB point just down there in the centre console. Probably would have been nice to have a couple, but at least you've got one, which is quite nice. The suede and the leather from the front obviously comes through to the back of the car as well. We've got the typical pull down centre armrest with a couple of cup holders. And if you're thinking of putting a child seat in the back of the car, the good news is the outer two seats have got the ISOFIX settings for extra security for child seats. Alright, so let's go and take the Kona N out on the road. Yeah, we'll have a bit of fun with this, I reckon. I'm interested to see how the sound compares to the i30, how the drive compares. We do get some extra features in here actually. As I mentioned earlier, we get adaptive cruise control, we've got head-up display and air-conditioned seats, and those things you don't actually get in the i30, which is a bit of a shame, because if you did have those things in the i30, it'd be even better than it is. That's just a personal preference really, because I quite like those features on a car. But yeah, let's go and have some fun, see what this is like, and yeah, Kona time. So I've been using it mostly with a custom setting. So what I've done is I've kept the suspension soft but put the exhaust on the loudest setting, because obviously you want to hear a bit of sound, but you don't want to shake your teeth loose at the same time, do you? The only downside to this car is a bit like the i30, all that power under the bonnet, you get to the speed limit very, very quickly, regardless of what the speed limit is on the road that you're driving. But it's quite addictive to slow down, drop a gear and then floor it, within the speed limits obviously, just because it makes such a good noise, and it's, yeah, just the sensation of the acceleration is pretty addictive. I've actually stuck a GoPro on the rear bumper just because I want to record some exhaust noises for you. So I'll play those throughout the video, and you'll better hear exactly what this car sounds like. Very easily amass a few points on your license in this car, because yeah, it catches you by surprise as to just how quick you're going. If you're not driven one of these or the i30N, the 8-speed dual clutch gearbox is absolutely fantastic. I have to say it's one of the best dual clutch gearboxes I've driven. I have driven a few. My Golf GTI that I own has got a DSG gearbox in it. And I personally think the Hyundai version is better than the one in the Golf. Whether that's because it's newer, whether it's because it's got 8 speeds rather than the 6 that I've got in my car, but just generally overall the gear changes are so quick and snappy, and you don't get any of that sort of like creeping that you do in DSG gearboxes sort of quite often. It is a really, really good gearbox. The other thing that's quite impressive is this car is only front wheel drive. But with the chassis settings they've got and those fantastic Pirelli P0 tyres, there's plenty of grip even when you go around a fast corner. It does give you a lot of confidence to drive sort of fairly quickly. But obviously you've got to do that safely, within the speed limits of the road that you're on. And because this car is a little bit of a niche, and by that I mean there's not many small SUVs that have got this much power. You normally find them with like a 1 litre turbo, or maybe a 1.4 litre turbo, or a 2 litre naturally aspirated engine. This one, short of something from one of the German manufacturers, is the only car with like any sort of decent amount of power. So it is a very, very sort of niche car. Its only real competition would be something like an Audi SQ2 if you want the SUV experience. But if you want the driving experience and the power, its real competition is the i30N. So Hyundai have got the market captured whichever way you look at it. if you want this much power, you buy an i30N or a Kona N. And I have to say, either way, it's a winning formula. If you're thinking on probably comparing this too much to the i30N, there's a very good reason. They're both very, very capable cars, and you'll have just as much fun in one as the other. Whether you choose this or the i30 comes down to personal preference. The one thing that's good about this is you won't see many on the road, whereas you do see a lot of i30Ns on the road. So if you want to be a little bit exclusive and yeah, just be a little bit different, then the Kona N is definitely the car for you. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the exhaust definitely doesn't sound as loud as the i30N. Whether that's something they've done deliberately to make it a bit more subdued, I'm not too sure. But yeah, so the i30 is definitely a little bit louder. As with every Hyundai model, you get a 5-year unlimited warranty, servicing's every 12 months or 10,000 Ks, and the warranty actually covers you for going on track use as well, which is something that's really rare these days. So if you've got any of the N range, you can actually go on track and you're covered by the warranty. The only thing you'd want to get is obviously track day insurance, because yeah, if you stuff it into a barrier, that's not covered by warranty. So that brings us to an end to the review of this Kona N. I've got to say, I've had a fabulous week driving this car. It is so much fun, the cracks from the exhaust, just the way it handles, how quickly it accelerates, but it's also really comfortable. You've got some nice creature comforts inside the car as well. The only slight disappointment with this car is the sort of rather dull and boring interior basically. It could do with a bit of colour inside, and some of the plastics are a little bit sort of cheap and sort of nasty, if you like. But overall, absolutely fantastic car. Whether you choose this or whether you choose an i30N probably boils down to personal preference. This will give you definitely a bit more exclusivity. It does come with a few more features inside, as I mentioned earlier. The heated and ventilated seats, the adaptive cruise control, the head-up display, so you do get a little bit more for your money. In terms of price, $56,000, $57,000 is where you'd find yourself, so it's not an expensive car. So bang for buck, yeah, what else would you buy for that sort of money? You certainly wouldn't get an SUV with that sort of performance for sort of mid to late $50,000 here in Australia. So yeah, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because that will tell you every time a new video goes live. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. So thanks for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.